Welcome to Catch Outdoors, episode number 8, Florida Attractions. Some big, some small, but mostly off the beaten track. You'll see where this is going as we get into it. I'm your host, Captain Rob Modi. Before we jump into today's episode, I want to let you know you can contact me via email at catchoutdoors@gmail.com, the website, catchoutdoors.com. There you'll find a list of episodes, both past, future. Yes, there's a Facebook page, Catch Ya Outdoors. My second book's been released, Bridge to Paradise, a book of short stories about fishing, travel, and life. Thank you, Middle River Press, my publisher. You can purchase it on our website, catchoutdoors.com. It's also now available on Amazon. I somewhat struggled this past week thinking of a subject. I went through a lot of things. I lie there in bed, stare at the ceiling early in the morning, and I think I could do this, or would this be interesting? And then this week the travel started. My wife's father passed away a week and a half ago or so, and we had the memorial service, the funeral service, actually up in Bushnell, Florida, at the National Cemetery up there, and so we were traveling back and forth, different cities on the road to Tampa, plus then back to Tampa, then down to Fort Myers, and then over here. And as a matter of fact, I'm doing this on Sunday. We're on our way to Orlando for a day and be back on Monday. So during the travels on the interstate and turnpike and whatnot, and especially the back roads up in the Central Florida area, you start seeing the road signs for places to visit and things to see. And it just reminded me of my kid days, growing up in Florida. When we traveled, there were all these little roadside stops, whether it was an attraction, a restaurant, whatever it might be. And I thought, that's probably where I should go with this, because there's an awful lot of history in Florida with roadside attractions. As a matter of fact, there are several books out by authors who have done things about the interesting stops that are still available in Florida, the history of them, as well as the availability now of these places in Florida. And I thought, that's where I'm going to go with this. So here we go. The Bushnell National Cemetery is located in up near Weeki Wachee. And I saw a sign for Weeki Wachee, and I thought, man, that's kind of what brought all this back, was hitting Weeki Wachee. And it's located in Hernando County. It's actually in Spring Hill, Florida. That's the town that it's in. And I'm sure you've seen signs. I mean, if you've traveled up and down anywhere from Highway 19 over to the Turnpike, I-75, you're going to see a sign for it when you get in that general area. It's one of the oldest attractions in the state of Florida and still in operation. I did a little research here. It started in 1947. And do you want to see a mermaid? Yeah, that's what Weeki Wachee is all about, mermaids. And as a kid, I mean, we went up there several times. I remember going. There's it has an underwater seating area, if you will, and they do a mermaid show several times a day. And not only that, it's a beautiful park and it's a beautiful location. I'm always fascinated with the springs. As a fisherman and as a Gulf of Mexico primarily fisherman, that's salt water, and the water changes color and density all the time. In the winter, it's clearer, and in the summer, I call it like it thickens up. That's not really what happens, but it gets a lot of tannin in the water from rain and runoff. And so the water's changed. The springs are just pure fresh water coming up out of the ground, out of caverns in Florida. And they pretty much have a constant temperature of around 74 degrees, no matter what time of year you're there. Little chilly for my swimming preference, but in the wintertime, you could actually go swimming in the springs. Weeki Wachee more or less became famous because of a gentleman who decided it would be a blast to do mermaids, and that's really where the whole thing started. The park also has the most volatile springs in all of Florida. It produces 117 million gallons of fresh spring water every day comes up out of the caverns. As a matter of fact, the current is so strong, the mermaids have to learn how to maneuver and do the show in a 5-mile-an-hour current, which I can tell you as a diver is not easy. The grounds are beautiful. The kids will love it. Take the kids. Oh man, they have stuff for all the kids to do related to mermaids. Especially if you got a little gal in the family, you certainly want to get her involved in that. There's also a camp for kids there. There's Buccaneer Bay, which is a water park. That's part of it. And then you have snorkeling and kayaking, of course, in the springs themselves. A note here, the springs now are a state park, so it's called Weeki Wachee Springs State Park. The state park system took it over. I'm not sure the exact year. I'm going to guess it was probably middle 20s, and basically took management of it. A lot of these, you have to understand, a lot of these roadside attractions that were here years and years ago were struggling. I'll mention a couple more here in the show as we go along, but they were struggling. They were trying to fight off things like Disney and SeaWorld and Universal, and so the attraction was losing people. And with the state park system, they had the money to advertise it, to refurbish it, and to bring people back as a state park. I wholly approve. I'm a big state park fan. You'll find that out the more you listen to the show. I'll continue to talk about how good the state parks are in Florida. So anyway, be sure to check out Weeki Wachee. It's really a special place. Silver Springs State Park, not far from there. That's located in Marion County. The initial attraction featured beautiful springs and glass bottom boats all the way back, believe it or not, to 1870. What happened at that point was a couple of gentlemen who were hanging out at the park and around the park decided it'd be just a great idea to put glass in the bottom of a rowboat so they could see down into the springs. And needless to say, that was the beginning of a pretty serious attraction. The glass bottom boats are still there. This is another state park, by the way. Silver Springs is also owned by the state park system of Florida and managed. I do have the date on that one. I saw this in my notes. 2013 is when they took over this park. It's beautiful. We were recently there. They still have the glass bottom boats, which, by the way, were motorized in 1924. And because of environmental reasons, they're now back to electric, which is pretty cool. But the park is beautiful. One of the things that's interesting about SeaWorld, right, is Silver Springs is it has this just it has an unbelievable terrain underwater, kind of almost mountainous. It's not as smooth as most springs you go into, so you really get a 3D depth perception there. You're allowed to you can swim there and stuff, not in the springs proper. Those are closed to the public, but on the outlying edges you can swim there if you want to. They've done a wonderful job of restoring the attraction. It's well worth visiting, so you'll have to put that on your list if you want into that. Again, I'm really into the springs. The clear water of the springs fascinates me. There are fish. You'll see bass and other fish in the springs. Not as thick as you would imagine in most of them that I've been in, but they're certainly there. Moving a little bit further, I guess I'll call it to the east. East and over, in Lake Wales, Florida. First of all, for those of us that are Floridians, this is the place where you can get dizzy because it's so high above sea level. I'm kidding. It is the highest point in Florida at 300 feet above sea level. I know. Little knobs and hills of Georgia are higher than that, but Florida's pretty daggone flat, except for the Lake Wales area. On top of these knobs in Lake Wales, or this little hill, if you will, this 300-foot hill, it's actually only 290-something feet. I'm rounding it off. A gentleman named Bach, Edward W. Bach, built a tower that's 205 feet tall, and most of us refer to it as Bach's Singing Tower. It doesn't really sing, but that's the label it got. What it really has inside of it that he added to it is a carillon. And what that is, it's an organ, if you will, that plays bells and chimes. So instead of an organ-type sound or a pipe organ sound, it's a keyboard instrument, but it actually has chimes built in. Important to note that Bach Tower is not recorded music. That's actually a person playing, and that person's called let's see if I can do this, the carillon. Okay, all right, carillon, right? Carillon, that's the thing, carillonneur. There, I almost got it out. He's the man, and it is a man, that sits behind the keyboard and plays basically, there'll be some popular songs, but you'll also hear things like some classical music and things like that played on it. They do it on well, the chimes sometimes will play hourly and half hour, but a lot of times there'll be a set schedule on when it's actually going to be played. So you'll have to, look that up. But the Bach Tower to me is not only the Bach Tower itself or the singing tower of Bach Tower, it's the gardens. It is an amazing place. As a matter of fact, if you look it up, it is labeled the Bach Tower Gardens. Um, every kind of native plant that you can imagine is there. Beautiful flowers. It's gorgeous year round because Florida's temperatures are generally pretty stable even in the wintertime. But it's worth seeing. The view from there is absolutely beautiful because you're basically in orange tree country. You're in the grove country when you get up that far. And you can look out over miles and miles of orange groves, which is pretty breathtaking. You start to understand where all that juice comes from. So be sure to check it out. I loved it as a kid. We went up there quite a bit as a kid. That was, my dad liked to go up there, so we would travel up and visit Bach Tower. Now let's take it to the coast, someplace I'm real familiar with. North Fort Myers, the Shell Factory. Hey, listen, 80 years. That's how long this place has been there. 80 years. The Shell Factory is now, it has a nature park. It's got a Scallywags fun park, they call it. It's got all kinds of things for the kids and the family to do. There's restaurants, and it's really weird. They keep rebuilding and redoing themselves year after year after year. It's like they seem to always be adding stuff. It's pretty incredible. But shells. I mean, that's where it started. Fort Myers / Sanibel, Captiva, that area is known for shelling. The outside public, the people that come to visit, our visitors, the vacationers, know that area is a shelling place. And that's really what the Shell Factory was all about when it started. It was a place to gather shells for sorting and for sales. And to this day, it's still there. If you're looking for shells, if you like things made of shells, shell memorabilia, if you will, of your trips to Florida, by all means, it's a place you want to stop. But they also have food, wild animals, rides. But the one thing that remains constant are the shells. So check it out. It's located on US 41 in North Fort Myers. Not hard to find. And you can go online and look it up to get the hours of operation for it. From growing up in Florida, I grew up in Clearwater, and just north of the Clearwater area is a place called Tarpon Springs. And I have to put this on the list, big time, because I have so many fond memories of it. Because the trips there were usually taken by my parents and grandparents. So when the grandparents came to town from either New Jersey or Virginia, we loaded up in the car and we headed up to Tarpon Springs. Now, what makes Tarpon Springs special? It's not tarpon, but yeah, they're there. But that's not what it's known for. It's known for sponges. There are huge sponge grounds just off of Tarpon Springs out toward the Gulf of Mexico. And the sponge divers arrived there about 90 years ago. It was the early 1900s. It's a huge Greek settlement. Lots and lots of people from Greece were in there. And these gentlemen were sponge divers. I mean, that's what they did. And it is still an amazing, neat little town. You can go downtown where the sponge docks are. They still sponge dive. They have trips out to the sponges, so you can take those on a boat. There is still a sorting area there where they sort the sponges as they bring them in by size and shape and quality. But now, on a recent trip, Jonelle and I were just there not long ago, they have all kinds of neat little gift shops and great things to do right in this small town. Obviously, Greek food, yum yum, and lots of other stuff. So be sure to check it out. I was really surprised. I thought when I went back there not long ago that it would just, well, you know how things are over the years. And the last time I had been there, holy moly, probably 30, 40 years ago. But no, still just like it was before. And as I dropped a little hint a little bit ago, it got its name Tarpon Springs for a reason. So I'll just leave it to that for my fishing fans out there in the audience. Let's go weird. Let's go very weird. I love this place. Way down south, the Skunk Ape Research Headquarters in Okeechobee, Florida. This is just off US 41. This is the east-west part of Tamiami Trail is what's referred to at that point, but that's the east-west part of 41 that heads out from the Marco slash Naples area and goes straight across to the Miami area. Um, yeah, the legend of the skunk ape. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this from the website rather than take notes and try to. I'm just going to go right back into this for you from their website. It goes back hundreds of years in the oral history of the indigenous people and the settlers of the Florida Everglades, but is actually legend. In 1997, Dave Shealy captured a photograph of the legendary creature that was echoed throughout media channels around the world. It was featured on the Discovery Channel, History Channel, Animal Planet, the Smithsonian Magazine, and many more. The Shealy's family's skunk ape headquarters has served as an Everglades icon and world-famous roadside attraction for decades. The exhibit hosts giant alligators and one of the largest snakes in captivity in the world, Goldie, the 350-pound reticulated python. Gift shop offers officially licensed skunk ape merchandise and a variety of alligator products as well as local native crafts. Be sure to check it out. Yeah, it's okay, so Hey, I didn't believe there was the green flash either until I saw one or two or three. Everybody, those who are listening going, green flash, what's that? I guess it's an attraction. If you're on a Gulf beach and you have the perfect day, and I'm talking perfect, the weather's got to be perfect, humidity's got to be perfect. As the sun slides into the water of the Gulf of Mexico, you occasionally will see a thing called the green flash. And it literally flashes. You'll get this green flash that lights up the sky for moments, not even moments, seconds to milliseconds, like the flash of a flash a camera. But it's very rare. And it's wonderful when somebody sees it and they tell you, hey, I saw the green flash. You're like, hey, join the club. Because I did boat trips. I did sunset boat trips for years on the west coast of Florida, and I saw only two during those trips. And I can't tell you how many times I was out there. And so that's the perfect location. When you're on a boat, you have nothing hindering the horizon, and that's what it's all about. I looked it up. It's pretty much the sun flashing up through the water, through the Gulf of Mexico waters. That's what they say. Kind of a northern lights effect, but not atmospheric. It's more water. But if you've ever seen it, it'll take your breath away. It's really, really cool. So, the skunk ape. I haven't seen one, but who says it ain't there? That's what I love about this stuff. So be sure to get down there and check it out. While you're in the area, Ochopee is famous for the world's smallest post office building in the United States. It looks like an oversized white outhouse. It's sitting off this edge of the 41, the Tamiami Trail. Yes, it's still in operation. Yes, the cool thing is you can stop there and have a letter postmarked from Ochopee and send it out. But anyway, be sure to check that out as you're heading in the direction of the Skunk Ape Research Headquarters. Highly recommended. All right, I have to do it. Let's go to the Keys. Yeah, one of my favorite places in all of Florida. I'm going to start with something that I have long enjoyed because I see the T-shirts every now and then, and what it usually says, I found it on the T-shirt, and that'll be on the front, and then on the back it'll be the No Name Pub. This is a cool little historic restaurant. I'll tell you this key that it's on. It's on Big Pine Key, down in Florida, and in the Florida Keys, of course, and that's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to tell you about its location. It's up to you to find it. They have a slogan. Let's see, the No Name Pub, a nice place if you can find it. That's their slogan. It's little. It has. You would think like, okay, so it's a no name. I made this mistake. Seafood. No, not really. This is about pizza and wings. They have some of the best pizza and wings you're ever going to eat in this funky little place. It's got all kinds of historic things on the walls. People have signed stuff and hung it up, not like the dollar bill thing that you'll see in some Florida restaurants or in pubs or bars. But this is more of a, historical type pieces on the wall. And of course, if you find it, you're going to have to get a T-shirt like everybody else to wear around, showing that you actually found it. I have one. I've been in the grocery store with one, and the person behind me will say, "Yeah, I found it." And I think that's so cool when somebody does something like that. So, there you go. Another one of the keys areas that I really like, I love visiting, is down in Key West itself. There's a place called the Secret Garden. And that's another one you're going to have to hunt for. This is not an easy find. I'll tell you this, it's in Old Town, and if you do some asking, you can find it. There was a map for it online, which wasn't correct, which I thought was, I don't know if they did that on purpose or what, but if you ask around, people will eventually get you to it, and the entrance to it is amazing. You're not going to believe I don't want to give away anymore. It's hard. It's hard to get into. Once in it, you're going to be blown away by the size of this thing, about how big it really is. The garden is beautiful. There are macaws, parrots, beautiful plants, orchids, things like that. And they actually do events there. They have gardening events and stuff like that at the Secret Garden. So if you're in Key West and you're doing all the usual stuff, the Duval crawl and listening to live music and all the things that I also very much enjoy, you're going to have to make your way to the Secret Garden and check it out. It's well worth finding. Also in Key West, the southernmost point, the buoy. Yes, that is an attraction. As a matter of fact, you will stand in line to get a photograph of that attraction. The buoy represents the continental United States end, and the 90 miles from that is Cuba, and everyone loves to get their picture there. Although Janelle pointed out before I started this, said, "Hey, by the way, it's not the southernmost point." And she's right. It's the southernmost public point. There is an area in Key West that's privately owned that, believe it or not, is a little closer to Cuba. And I've always found it kind of comical when people think, whatever, it's touristy and that's what it's all about. But fact be known, it is not as close to Cuba as people think it is. However, it's a great place to get a photograph taken of the gang. And what's nice is there's a lot of people hanging around there. So if you want to get a group shot, don't be afraid to hand your camera over to somebody and have them take a picture of you all standing there. So that's the southernmost point, the buoy. And that's located obviously at the tippy end of Key West, Florida. All right, let's switch gears again. This time we're going to jump back in the car and we're going to drive all the way up Florida, all the way up I-95, one of my least favorite interstates, but we won't go there right now. We're going to get all the way up and head up towards St. Augustine, Florida. And once we get into St. Augustine, we're going to visit a place called Marineland. And Marineland has been around for ages. I'm going to go and say, I'm guessing on this one. I believe it was, I know it was started in 1938. It was started in 1930. 1940s is when it really got popular, but it was started in 1938. Long story short, this was an aquarium attraction located right on the beach in St. Augustine, near St. Augustine. And the idea was they wanted to show off saltwater fish, but they didn't have the refinements done back then that we have today for inshore aquariums, big aquariums like up in Georgia and places like that, to keep salt water viable for these creatures. So what they did was they built these gigantic pumps and pumped water literally out of the Atlantic Ocean daily. They would pump water through this tank system. And needless to say, it became wildly popular. They brought in the first dolphin. And that was 1947, they brought in the first dolphin, and so they had a dolphin show. And by the way, they treated the dolphin extremely well. A lot of times people are like, oh, a captive animal. Yeah, I know. Things have really changed. Now you have to remember, this was 1947. And the dolphin's name, by the way, was Spray. That was the name of the dolphin. They then, in the 50s and 60s, went one step further and started the marine studios. And this was really something. Marineland is where the underwater camera was developed. They started using cameras outside through glass windows to take underwater shots, whether it was a diver, if it was needed in a movie. Kind of think along the lines of a James Bond type thing. Of course, this was pre that. One of the more popular movies of the time that was shot there was The Creature from the Black Lagoon. And they also did Revenge of the Creature from the Black Lagoon, Secrets of the Reef. I wrote down a list of these things. It was pretty crazy. There's also a historical museum as part of Marineland. Now, let me make this clear. They moved it. When I went there, it was actually there. Below ground, they had put the museum in showing all the old movie cameras and the equipment and stuff that they used to film a lot of these early films. And it was really neat. They have now located it at the St. Augustine Historical Society. So if you go into downtown St. Augustine, and you go to what they call the oldest house complex, the museum has been moved there. It is well worth it. I enjoyed the dolphins and the sharks and all the fish and the things in the tanks, and of course the talks that they do. And remember, this is not a dolphin show type place anymore. This is actually a rehabilitation place for dolphins. You can swim with them. They have programs, but you'll need to look that up and sign up in advance for it. That's not something that happens all the time. But they work very, very hard to take care of marine life and to understand the problems with marine life and what's going on. The movie side of it, the Historical Society now of St. Augustine is now in charge of that. But do it. Go see this. It's really fascinating to see how they developed underwater camp. Things that we take for, I take a GoPro for crying out loud. I go snorkeling and diving with a GoPro. You can go back and see how all that started, and it really is amazing. Florida's absolutely full of weirdness, and also really great roadside attractions that still exist. This is the tip of the iceberg that I've covered today. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking of Gatorland and Dinosaur World and all these things that are out there that are certainly worth a stop, and especially a nostalgic stop. You have to remember that Florida was vacation land. Florida was the pie in the sky back in the 40s and 50s, especially from people up north who were traveling south. And when they traveled south, they weren't traveling on interstate highways. They were driving on U.S. highways, and along with gas stations and places to stop and eat. Heck, I remember the roads that we took even had little picnic table stops. Under the trees, you could just pull off and get the cooler out of the car, and you ate lunch on top of a concrete picnic table. It was really a different world than it is now. But a lot of those roadside attractions, that's where they came from. They were catching the attention and the dollars of people visiting Florida as they headed south to come for warmth and beaches. And they're still there. Quite a few of them are still there. There are books you can get. I went online and took a look. There are quite a few more than I thought there'd be. But there are actually books listing the different attractions. There's one that shows like the top 50. There's one that has the top 100. And a lot of these things are still in existence, and I think well worth the trip, especially historically. I'm all about that. I love stepping back in time to see what was there, because I lived it as a kid here in Florida. A lot of our summertime was spent going to these different attractions and seeing things all around Florida. So if you get the time, by all means, get out there and do it and enjoy it. I mean, that's what Florida is all about. So thank you so much for listening. Without listeners like you, I wouldn't have a podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, please tell a friend. You can reach me via email at catchoutdoors@gmail.com. All questions and suggestions for past, current, and future podcasts are more than welcome. Catch You Outdoors is hosted by Anchor and available via Spotify. Our Facebook page is Catch You Outdoors. Our website is catchoutdoors.com. Until next time, get outdoors and enjoy.